The bride contract, the price of the dress was her freedom. The veil trembled in her hands. Her fingers, once so sure, so steady, were now pale and cold as they clutched the delicate lace. Emily Carter stood in front of the full-length mirror in a bridal suite that smelled of roses and regret. The dress was perfect. Ivory silk hugged her body like a whisper, but she couldn't breathe. Not from the tight corset. No, that was nothing compared to the weight on her chest. This wasn't a wedding. It was a transaction. A knock echoed through the room. 5 minutes, came a voice on the other side of the door. Mr. Blackwood doesn't like to be kept waiting. Emily closed her eyes, trying to gather what little courage she had left. This was for her mother, for the roof over their heads, for the hospital bills, for survival. As she forced a smile and reached for the bouquet, her heart screamed. She was marrying a stranger. A cold, arrogant billionaire who hadn't even looked her in the eyes since she signed the contract. Damian Blackwood. And she didn't even know why he'd chosen her. 5 days earlier, rain poured over the city like a cruel blessing, soaking Emily's coat as she ran through the crowded sidewalk of downtown Manhattan. Her cheap shoes were falling apart, and the folder she clutched to her chest was starting to dissolve in her arms. Inside that folder, rejection letters. The last one was from a gallery she had begged for an internship. The rent was due. Her mother's condition was worsening, and the man who had once promised to help, her father, was nowhere to be found. She stopped in front of a glass tower that pierced the sky. Blackwood International. She hadn't meant to come here, but something pulled her toward the entrance. Desperation. And maybe fate. In the shadows of his office, Damian watched the security footage. There she was. Emily Carter. So small, so delicate, so unaware. He leaned back in his leather chair, eyes cold as steel. "She came," he murmured, "just like I knew she would." Julian, his assistant, raised a brow. "Are you sure about this, Damian? She looks innocent." Damian's jaw clenched. "Innocence," he said, "is just another mask. Her father destroyed everything I had. She will pay the debt." He turned the screen off and stood. "Tell legal to prepare the papers. I want her married to me by Friday. If you're already hooked by Emily's heartbreaking choice and Damian's secret plan for revenge, make sure to subscribe to never miss the next chapter of this emotional roller coaster. This love story is only getting started. Signed in silence, sealed in ice." The contract lay on the marble table like a weapon. 3 pages, 4 signatures, 1 ruined life. Emily stared at the elegant document in front of her. Her name was printed in gold ink beneath Damian's. Everything about this screamed luxury, except the way it made her feel. "You're unusually quiet," Damian said, his voice as cold and sharp as the New York air outside his penthouse office. Emily looked up. He was towering behind the desk, dressed in a tailored navy suit that matched the storm in his eyes, not a hair out of place, not a flicker of warmth, just control. "I'm just trying to understand what I'm agreeing to," she said quietly. "You're agreeing to become my wife for 1 year," he replied without hesitation. "You'll live with me, attend public events, obey my terms, no questions asked. And in return, you'll cover my mother's medical expenses." "Fully," he said, before walking around the desk to stand closer. Too close. Emily resisted the instinct to shrink away. His presence was suffocating, magnetic, impossible to ignore. "There's a confidentiality clause, and a morality one," he added, pointing to the paper. "No scandals, no lovers, no leaks?" She hesitated. "And intimacy?" He smirked, not kindly. "Only if I want it." Her cheeks flushed with shame, but she nodded. What choice did she have? Damian slid the pen across the table. His hand brushed hers, intentionally. She felt it like a shock to her system. "Sign it, Emily." She held the pen. Her fingers trembled. "I don't even know you," she whispered. "You don't need to," he said. "You just need to be mine." That night, Emily stood in the empty guest room of Damian's penthouse. Not a honeymoon suite, not a place of love or welcome, just another cold, beautiful prison. The walls were all glass and marble. Expensive artwork hung like judgment on every corner. She stood by the window staring at the glittering skyline, trying to breathe. Down the hall she could hear him on the phone. "Yes, it's done," she signed. A pause. Then, "No, she doesn't know. She thinks this is about pity." His voice lowered, darker. "But this is about payback. Her father ruined mine, and now every day she wears my name, she'll be paying it back." Her legs gave way. She sank onto the floor. The marriage wasn't just cold, it was cruel, and she had just walked into the fire willingly. Meanwhile, Damian stood by the fireplace in his private study, whiskey in hand. His jaw was tight. His heart, he told himself, was not involved. But when he'd seen her sign, when she'd looked up at him with those scared, trusting eyes, something inside him had shifted, dangerously. He poured another drink. 1 year. That was all. 1 year of control, of revenge. And then she would be gone. But something told him this contract would destroy more than just her. It might destroy them both. A house built on silence. Emily woke in a bed that wasn't hers, in a life that didn't feel like her own. The sun barely filtered through the sheer white curtains, soft light touching the pale walls of her new bedroom. The sheets smelled like lavender and sterility. Everything in Damian Blackwood's world was spotless, calculated, void of warmth. She had slept little. Her mind had replayed every word of his cold conversation from the night before, every syllable a dagger. She hadn't just sold herself. She had sold her silence. As she stepped out of bed and walked toward the closet, she found it already stocked. Dresses, heels, jewellery, brands she'd only ever seen in magazines. None of it felt real. At the centre, a note on black cardstock in slanted gold handwriting. "Dinner tonight. 8 p.m. Wear red. D." Her stomach twisted. Damian adjusted his cufflinks in the mirror. Red. She would look striking in red, just like her father's mistress had, the night everything fell apart. The memory was like poison, bitter, corrosive. Julian entered the room holding a tablet. "Everything's arranged. The press will be at the charity gala. You'll be arriving together. Emily's name has been added to the official guest list." "And the media leaks?" "Handled. The narrative is clean. Whirlwind romance, private ceremony, no comment on details." Damian nodded, though his mind was elsewhere. He didn't care what the world believed. He only cared that Emily remained exactly where he needed her, under control, under contract, and far from the truth. That evening, when Emily stepped into the grand foyer of Damian's penthouse, he nearly forgot to breathe. She wore the red gown, floor-length silk that clung to her body like a promise. Her dark hair was swept into a low bun, a single strand falling delicately over her cheek. She looked fragile, but there was something in her eyes that made him pause. Not fear, not submission. Anger. "You look..." He cleared his throat. "Appropriate." She didn't thank him. Instead, she walked toward the elevator without waiting for his cue. "You arranged the dress, the time, the car," she said quietly, as the doors closed behind them. "Did it ever occur to you to ask what I wanted?" Damian turned to her, face unreadable. "This is a contract, Emily, not a courtship." "Then maybe you should stop pretending to care." The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto a world of flashbulbs, paparazzi and shimmering luxury. The charity gala awaited. And as they stepped onto the carpeted entrance hand in hand, smiles fixed on their faces, Emily whispered without turning to him, "I know you're hiding something." His grip tightened. So was she. Inside the ballroom, cameras flashed and laughter echoed. But beneath it all, tensions simmered between them like static. They danced once, a slow, formal waltz that looked perfect to everyone watching. But every step was a battle, Every touch, a lie. "Why did you choose me, Damian?" she asked softly as they turned. He leaned down, lips near her ear. "Because you were the perfect weakness." Her breath caught, and for the first time she realized this man didn't just want a bride. He wanted her to suffer. The man behind the mask. The gala ended hours ago, but the echo of it still rang in Emily's ears. The laughter, the questions, the constant clicking of cameras. She had smiled through it all like a porcelain doll, beautiful, silent, hollow. Now she sat at the edge of the massive bed in the guest wing, her wing, as Damian had called it. The silence in the penthouse was colder than the wind outside. She hadn't seen him since they returned. She slipped off the heels he had picked for her, her toes aching with every pulse. Her body was exhausted, but her mind was burning. Why had he said that? "You were the perfect weakness." What did he mean? What did he really want from her? In the shadows of his study, Damian stood in front of the fireplace, a glass of scotch untouched in his hand. He'd watched her at the gala, how she smiled, how she carried herself with dignity despite everything. She was better at this than he'd expected. He hated that. Hated how her presence was beginning to seep into his thoughts, how her sadness no longer pleased him, but gnawed at something buried in his chest. Julian entered quietly. "The media's spinning it perfectly. Everyone's eating up the story. They think it's love at first sight." Damian said nothing. Julian hesitated. "You could still end this, Damian. She doesn't know. She doesn't deserve... She deserves everything she's getting," he snapped, finally turning around. His eyes were like ice. "You saw what her father did to mine. You saw how we lost everything. She's just a pawn." Julian nodded slowly, but his expression was tight. "And if the pawn starts to feel like something more?" Damian didn't answer, because he didn't like the truth forming in the back of his mind. The next morning, Emily found a file on the kitchen counter. No note, no explanation. She hesitated, then opened it. It was her own life. Photos, documents, records, her school transcripts, her hospital visits with her mother, even receipts from the bakery she'd worked at last year, all collected, all documented, all watched. Her stomach dropped. This wasn't just business. This was surveillance. Her heart pounded as she reached the last page and found something strange. A photo of her father, younger, in a luxury suit, standing beside a man she didn't recognize, but with Damian's eyes. She froze. This wasn't just about her, this was about the past. A past someone had gone to great lengths to hide. When Damian returned that evening, she was waiting for him in the living room. "You've been spying on me," she said, holding up the file. He didn't flinch. "I needed to know who I was marrying." "That's a lie. This isn't due diligence, this is obsession." He walked past her, unbothered. "Don't flatter yourself." "But I saw it. That photo. My father and that man. Was that your father?" Damian stopped. She saw it then. The flicker. The momentary crack in the perfect mask. "You want the truth?" he said, voice low. "Fine." He turned around. "Your father stole everything from mine, our company, our legacy, our home. He ruined us and walked away without consequence." Emily stared at him, stunned. "No," she whispered. "That can't be true." Damian stepped closer. "He destroyed my family. Now I'm taking something from his. But I'm not him. I don't care." His voice broke just slightly. "I needed to hate you, Emily." Her breath caught. "Then why do you sound like you hate yourself more?" They stood inches apart, two storms colliding, neither of them ready for what came next. When hate starts to hurt, Emily didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling of her pristine, sterile room, replaying every word of Damian's confession. "I needed to hate you, Emily. I don't care." But his voice had shaken, his hands had clenched, and for a man who claimed to feel nothing, his eyes had looked like a war zone. The next morning she walked into the dining room to find him already seated at the table, black coffee in hand, unread newspaper in front of him. His tie was slightly crooked, just enough to make him seem human. He didn't look up as she sat across from him. "Did you sleep?" he asked, not unkindly. She wanted to ignore him, to throw his cruelty back at him. But something inside her whispered, "Ask, dig, understand." "I dreamed about my father," she said instead. Damian's fingers tightened around his cup. "Did you know he disappeared when I was 15? No note, no goodbye, just gone. My mother never got over it." "I know," he said quietly. "I read the reports." "Then you know I haven't seen or heard from him in almost 10 years. She leaned forward, voice steady. "Which means whatever he did to you, I didn't do it." He finally looked at her. His gaze was unreadable, but not empty. "You carry his blood. And you carry a heart full of poison." The silence that followed was sharp and dangerous. She rose to leave, but Damian's voice stopped her. "I'll be gone most of the day," he said. "You'll receive a dress. We're expected at the Black and Grey Foundation dinner tonight. You'll attend as my wife." She turned back. "I'm not a prop." "You're mine," he said darkly. "You agreed to that." Her cheeks burned with humiliation and rage, but she said nothing. Instead, she walked away, but he saw the way her hands shook as she gripped the edge of the door. That evening, the dress arrived, midnight blue, floor length, with crystals stitched along the neckline like stars trapped in velvet. It was stunning, elegant, uncomfortably expensive. Emily put it on with numb hands. She looked into the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back at her. But behind the beauty, there was fire. She would not let him break her. At the dinner, they were the perfect couple. His hand rested lightly on her back, his smile tailored for the cameras. She said little, her eyes scanning the room, her mind elsewhere, until she heard a voice that made her blood freeze. "Emily Carter!" She turned and saw her father, older, greyer, but him. "Dad?" she whispered. The room spun. He looked panicked, not joyful, not relieved, panicked. And then she felt it, Damian's grip tightening on her arm, subtle but firm. "Let's go," he said under his breath. She resisted. "I know who he is," Damian snapped. "This isn't the time." But her father pushed forward, his voice trembling. "Emily, you have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. He's dangerous." Her heart stopped. She turned to Damian. "Is that true?" Damian's eyes met hers, and for the first time they weren't cold. They were burning, with anger, with fear, with something else she couldn't name. "This is more complicated than you know," he said quietly. She stepped back from both of them. "I think it's time I learned." A father's lie, a husband's war. The ride back to the penthouse was silence carved in ice. Emily sat in the corner of the luxury car, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, her mind spinning with the image of her father's face, worn, guilty, desperate. Damian didn't say a word, but his jaw was locked. His hand had been in a tight fist since they left the gala. The moment they entered the penthouse, Emily turned on him. "You knew he'd be there, didn't you?" Damian loosened his tie, unbothered. "I suspected." "You used me as bait," she said, the words tasting bitter. "This whole time, this wasn't about marriage. It wasn't even about revenge. You were trying to draw him out." Damian didn't deny it. "Every offer I made to your family before, your mother's medical bills, the mysterious donations, the loan approval that saved your apartment, all of it was to lure him out of hiding. And it worked." Her chest tightened. "So I'm just a pawn?" His eyes flashed. "No, you were the key." She laughed, breathless. "That's worse." She stormed into her room, slamming the door behind her. But nothing could shut out the storm inside her. Her father had looked afraid of Damian. That part wasn't hard to believe. Damian was dangerous. But what if there was more? She remembered the photo in the file. Her father, years ago, smiling beside a man who looked just like Damian. She had questions. She had rights, and she was done being silent. That night, Damian stared at the city skyline from his office, whiskey untouched at his side. He could still hear her voice. "So I'm just a pawn." He hadn't meant to feel anything, but he did. When she looked at him with those wounded eyes, something cracked. He hated it. He hated that she wasn't like her father, that she hadn't asked for any of this, that her pain made him feel guilty. The next morning, Emily walked into the living room holding her phone. "I want answers," she said. "And if you won't give them to me, I'll find someone who will." Damian looked up from his laptop. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm telling you the truth. I want to know what happened between our families. The real story." "You're not ready." She stepped closer. "Try me." He stood, walked to a small cabinet in the corner, unlocked it, and pulled out an old leather folder. He placed it on the table. "This was the original merger contract. Your father and mine were supposed to launch Blackwood Carter Ventures together. It was going to be revolutionary." Emily slowly opened it. Pages and signatures, financial projections, legal terms, her father's name beside Damian's. What happened? He took it all, stole the patent, sold it to a competitor. My father lost everything. We had to sell the house, the company collapsed and... He paused. His voice lowered. "And my father took his life." Emily froze, her fingers trembled. "I didn't know." "Of course you didn't. Your father vanished after the deal. No one could find him, until tonight." She looked up, her voice cracking. "And so you married me to punish him?" Damian met her eyes. "No," he said. "I married you because I wanted him to feel powerless, the same way I did." She stepped back. "And me? What am I supposed to feel?" He didn't answer, because for the first time he didn't know. Later that night, she sat alone on the rooftop terrace, the city lights stretching endlessly below her. Damian found her there, a blanket draped over her shoulders. "I meant what I said," he murmured. "You weren't supposed to get hurt." She looked at him. "But I did." Silence. And then, unexpectedly, he sat beside her. They didn't touch, didn't speak. But for the first time since their wedding, they breathed the same silence. Together, when silence feels like touch. The rooftop air was cold, but it didn't bother Emily. What chilled her was the quiet ache growing between them, something unspoken, something dangerously close to... real. Damian sat beside her, not touching her, not looking at her, but somehow more present than he'd ever been. She hated how her body responded to his nearness, how her heart, traitorous and soft, still beat faster when he was close, even after everything. "You don't have to stay," she whispered. "I know," he said, voice low. "But I want to." She turned her head slowly, searching for the lie. But all she saw was exhaustion in his eyes, not physical but soul deep. He looked like a man who hadn't rested in years. "Was it worth it?" she asked. He didn't answer at first. Then, "No." Just that. One word, heavy as lead. The next morning, something changed. Damian didn't leave for work at dawn like usual. Instead, he stayed in, quietly sipping coffee across from her in the kitchen. Emily, unsure how to navigate this, peace, kept to herself. But when he placed a cup of her favourite tea, with honey, not sugar, in front of her, she froze. "You remembered," she said softly. He shrugged. "I read everything about you. I memorised some things." She looked at him carefully. "Why are you being nice to me?" He met her gaze, unflinching. "Because I don't want to lose what little humanity I have left." She blinked. Was that regret in his voice? That afternoon, Emily found herself wandering the private gallery wing of the penthouse, walls lined with priceless art collected over generations. Then she saw it, a canvas shoved into a far corner, half covered with a sheet. It was nothing like the others, no signature, no elaborate frame, just raw brushstrokes and bleeding colour. A face. Her face. She stepped closer, breath caught. It was imperfect, unfinished, but undeniably her. Painted with tension, shadows and pain. She turned and found Damian standing in the doorway, watching. "You painted this," she said. He didn't deny it. "I started it the night after you signed the contract." Her voice trembled. "Why?" He stepped forward slowly. "Because I didn't know what else to do with the guilt." She turned back to the painting. "You saw me as a weapon, a means to an end. I see you now," he said quietly, "and I can't unsee you." She swallowed hard. This man, her husband by contract, her captor by design, was no longer a villain in her eyes. He was a man buried under too many broken things, and maybe, just maybe, she wanted to help him dig out. That night, they didn't speak much, but when Emily passed him in the hallway, she paused, looked up at him and whispered, "Good night, Damian." His eyes searched hers, not with suspicion this time, but with longing. "Good night, Emily." It was the first time he'd said her name with gentleness, and when she closed her bedroom door behind her, she realised something terrifying. She didn't want to hate him anymore. The kiss that shouldn't happen days passed, not peacefully, but differently. The tension between Emily and Damian didn't disappear. It changed. It softened at the edges. The sharp barbs turned to lingering glances. The silence between them was no longer cold, but heavy with meaning. They shared meals now, sometimes even conversation. Brief, careful conversations. Nothing more, nothing less. And yet everything was changing. One rainy afternoon, Emily found herself alone in the penthouse library. Rows of antique books lined the walls, and a fire crackled in the marble hearth. She chose a novel from the shelf, Jane Eyre ironically, and curled up by the window. She didn't hear Damian enter. "I never imagined you'd be the Bronte type," he said from the doorway. She looked up. "Because I signed a contract instead of marrying for love." He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Because I assumed you were practical." She closed the book gently. "I used to be romantic," she admitted, "until love disappeared with my father." Damian's eyes darkened. "I didn't know he left you too." She nodded. "He vanished. One day he was my hero, the next, gone. I waited, cried, begged, and eventually I stopped." He didn't speak for a moment. Then he crossed the room slowly and sat across from her. "You deserved better," he said. "So did you," she replied. The silence stretched. Then she asked the question neither of them had dared say aloud. "If things had been different, would you have chosen me?" Damian's jaw tightened. His voice, when it came, was low. "I don't know." She stood, heart pounding. "Liar." Later that night, thunder rumbled in the distance. Emily stood on the balcony wrapped in a shawl, watching lightning crack over the skyline. She didn't hear him approach, but she felt him. Damian stepped beside her, close but not touching. "You should be inside." "I like the storm." He glanced at her. "You don't fear chaos?" She shook her head. "I think I've lived in it long enough to know its rhythm." He studied her face. "You never stop surprising me." "I stopped trying to impress you a long time ago." A slow smile tugged at his mouth. Not mocking, not cruel, real. "You already did, from the first moment you refused to cry in front of me." She turned to him then, eyes fierce. "I won't be weak for you, Damian." "I don't want you to be," he murmured. "I want you to be real." And then, without warning, he stepped forward. His hand brushed her cheek. She should have moved, should have pulled away, but she didn't. She stood still as he leaned down and his lips pressed to hers, soft at first, then urgent. A kiss full of things they hadn't said, things they couldn't admit, guilt, hunger, rage, longing. When he finally pulled back, breathless, she whispered, "That shouldn't have happened." "I know," he said. And then he kissed her again. Where desire becomes dangerous. Emily couldn't sleep. Not after that kiss, or the second one, or the one after that, soft, slow, desperate. She had lost count of how many times their mouths found each other in the dark, how many times her heart betrayed her by racing whenever he looked at her. This wasn't supposed to happen. She wasn't supposed to feel anything for him. But here she was, wide awake, lips tingling, breath shaky, heart completely disoriented. She touched her mouth, remembering the warmth of his hands, the way he whispered her name as if it hurt him. And it did hurt him, because Damian Blackwood wasn't meant to care. But last night, he had. In the other room, Damian stood in front of the mirror, shirt unbuttoned, hair tousled, a look of war behind his eyes. He'd kissed her. He'd lost control. And he'd wanted to. No plan. No strategy. No revenge. Just need. Need for her voice. Her fire. Her defiance. Her truth. And that terrified him more than anything. Because if she could break through, she could destroy him. Just like her father did. The next morning was quiet, but not cold. They met in the hallway, eyes locking. Neither spoke of what happened the night before, but everything had changed. Later, while Damian was in a meeting downtown, Emily sat in the study, trying to distract herself with books and tea. But a knock at the penthouse door startled her. She wasn't expecting anyone. She opened it and froze. Veronica, tall, beautiful, poised in designer heels and venomous elegance. "Hello, Emily," she said with a practiced smile. "Aren't you going to invite me in?" Emily held her ground. "Damian's not home." "Oh, I'm not here for him," Veronica purred, stepping inside anyway. "I'm here for you." They sat across from each other in the living room, two women separated by more than just velvet cushions. Veronica sipped her espresso like it was blood. "I suppose you think he cares about you," she said. "That this isn't all just part of his little power game." Emily said nothing. "He used me too, you know," Veronica continued. "Only difference is I wasn't stupid enough to fall for him." Emily's spine straightened. "Then why are you still here?" Veronica's smile vanished. "Because I know something you don't," she whispered. "About your father, about the contract, and about the real reason Damian married you." Emily's heart raced. "I already know what my father did." "Oh, darling." Veronica leaned closer, eyes gleaming. "No, you really don't." She placed a small USB drive on the table. "When you're ready to know the truth," she said, standing up, "just watch what's on this." "And why would you help me?" Emily asked. Veronica smirked. "Because if I can't have Damian, neither can you." That night, Emily held the USB drive in her hand like it was made of fire. She knew whatever it contained could ruin the fragile thing that was beginning between her and Damian. But wasn't that better than living in the dark? She plugged it into her laptop and hit play. The truth hidden in shadows. The screen flickered to life, revealing shaky footage from years ago. A younger Damian, sharp-suited and full of fire, confronted Emily's father in a dimly lit office. "You stole everything from my family." Damian's voice cracked with rage. "You lied. You betrayed us all." Her father's face was cold but weary. "It was business, nothing personal." Damian slammed his fist on the table. "You destroyed my father's dream, his life, and he paid the price." Emily watched, breath shallow, as the video cut to a conversation she'd never expected. Her father pleading, desperate, offering something unseen. A contract, a secret deal. Her heart thudded. The footage ended abruptly. Emily sat back, stunned. What had her father offered to save himself? And at what cost? Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Not everything is as it seems. Be careful who you trust. Damian returned home late that night. Emily confronted him immediately, showing him the USB drive. His expression darkened. That video, it's only part of the story. He moved close. His voice lowered. Your father wasn't just a victim. He made choices, dangerous ones, choices that put us all at risk. Emily's eyes narrowed. What choices? Damian hesitated, then said, There was a third party involved. Someone powerful, someone who wanted to control us both. And you married me to protect us? No, he admitted bitterly. I married you to survive. That night, the fragile alliance between them shifted. No longer just revenge or survival. Something more real, more complicated was unfolding. The enemies within. The next morning, the penthouse felt colder than usual. Emily awoke to a message on her phone from an unknown number. You're closer than you think. Watch your back. Her pulse quickened. Damian was already gone, off to another meeting, but she couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. Julian appeared at the door with a grim expression. We have a problem, he said quietly. Veronica isn't just an ex. She's working with the people who want to take everything from Blackwood International. They're planning something big. Emily's heart sank. What does that mean for us? Julian met her eyes. It means we're all targets now. That evening, Damian returned early. He found Emily reviewing documents, files from his legal team that revealed a corporate sabotage plot targeting Blackwood's assets. She looked up as he entered. We're not just fighting the past anymore, she said. We're fighting for our future. Damian nodded slowly. For the first time, he admitted, I want you by my side. Not as a contract bride, but as my partner. Emily's breath caught. Was this the real beginning? But outside, in the city's shadows, enemies closed in. Trust on shaky ground. The city lights glittered beneath the penthouse windows, but the atmosphere inside was anything but bright. Emily sat at the long mahogany dining table, papers spread before her like fragments of a puzzle she couldn't yet solve. The documents detailed suspicious transactions, shell companies, and unexplained withdrawals, all aimed at dismantling Blackwood International from the inside. Her fingers trembled as she traced a name that appeared again and again. Victor Crane. A man she'd never heard of. Damian entered silently, setting his briefcase down, eyes sharp and tired. You've been digging, he said, voice low. I have to know who we're really up against, Emily replied. This isn't just about family grudges anymore. It's a war. Damian pulled out a chair and sat opposite her. Victor Crane is a ruthless player in the business world. He's destroyed more companies than I can count, and he has a personal vendetta against my family. Emily swallowed hard. What does he want? Control, power, revenge. Damian's gaze darkened, and he sees Blackwood International as the crown jewel he must crush. The weight of his words settled between them like a storm cloud. Days blurred into nights as they worked side by side, strategizing defenses, calling in favors, and fortifying alliances. Emily found herself drawn deeper into Damian's world, a world of sharp suits, hidden agendas, and whispered threats. And yet, through it all, the distance between them was shrinking. Their stolen moments became more frequent, a touch lingering too long, a glance loaded with meaning, a quiet conversation that revealed a glimpse of the man beneath the armor. But trust was still fragile. Every secret left unspoken was a crack waiting to break. One evening, as rain hammered the windows, Damian found Emily in the library, a glass of wine in hand, staring into the fire. She didn't hear him approach. He sat beside her, careful not to startle. Emily, he began, voice softer than usual. I want to tell you everything. No more secrets. She looked at him, hope flickering in her eyes. I'm ready. Damian took a deep breath. My father's death wasn't an accident, she gasped, clutching the armrest. There was a betrayal. Someone close, someone we trusted. Emily's mind raced. Victor Crane? Damian nodded grimly. Yes, he orchestrated it all. The merger, the sabotage, the ruin. Tears welled in her eyes, not for the man she barely knew, but for the pain etched into Damian's soul. And that's why I married you, he said quietly. To protect you. To protect what's left of my family. She reached out, fingers trembling, and touched his hand. For the first time, she whispered, I believe you. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows as they sat together. Two broken souls finding strength in each other's arms. But outside, danger loomed closer. Because Victor Crane was watching, and he wasn't finished. Shadows of deception. The days that followed were a whirlwind of whispers and warnings. Emily barely recognized the woman she was becoming. No longer the timid girl who signed a contract out of desperation, but a fierce woman fighting to claim her life back. She spent hours in Damian's office, poring over files and emails, uncovering layers of deceit woven by Victor Crane's network. The deeper they dug, the clearer the picture became. Victor wasn't just an enemy of Damian's family. He was a man who thrived on chaos and destruction, willing to destroy anyone who stood in his way. One evening, as rain hammered the city outside, Emily received a chilling phone call. A voice, cold and unyielding, whispered, "Stop digging, or everything you love will burn." Her blood ran cold. She knew the threat wasn't empty. Damian found her moments later, pale and shaken. He pulled her into a fierce embrace, the warmth of his body the only shield against the growing storm. "We'll face this together," he promised. But inside, both knew the danger was just beginning. Meanwhile, Victor Crane sat in his high-rise office, watching the city like a king surveying his kingdom. He smiled thinly as he reviewed the latest reports on Emily Carter, the woman threatening to unravel his plans. "Let her come," he murmured. "Let her dig deeper." His fingers tapped a slow rhythm on the polished desk. "She will learn that some contracts can never be broken." Back at the penthouse, Damian and Emily's alliance was tested in ways neither expected. Trust cracked under pressure. Secrets clawed their way to the surface. One night, Emily stumbled upon a letter, old, worn, hidden in Damian's desk. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the fragile paper. It was from Victor Crane, a threat aimed directly at Damian's family, dated years before the contract was signed. Her heart pounded. Had Damian kept this from her? That confrontation came late into the night. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" Emily demanded. Damian's face was shadowed in guilt. "I wanted to protect you," he confessed. "But I see now that keeping secrets only makes us weaker." She looked into his eyes. "We're stronger together, but only if we're honest." He nodded slowly. "From now on, no more lies." In the silence that followed, they found something fragile and beautiful, a promise of a future where love and truth could coexist. But outside their walls, the game was far from over. Betrayal's whisper. The morning sun spilled through the tall windows of the penthouse, casting long shadows across the room where Damian and Emily sat side by side, poring over every detail of their fragile alliance. But peace was fleeting. A storm was gathering, one born not just from outside forces, but from within. Emily's discovery of the letter from Victor Crane had shattered the fragile trust they'd built. The questions swirled between them like an unspoken tempest. "Why keep this from me?" Emily's voice trembled with hurt. Damian's jaw clenched. "Because I was afraid that if you knew the full truth, you'd walk away." "I'm not walking away," she whispered. "But I need to know everything." His eyes searched hers, heavy with regret. "There's more. Things I haven't told you because I thought I could handle it alone." She reached for his hand. "We're a team." That evening, Damian revealed the truth. A story of old family alliances, hidden debts, and dangerous enemies who lurked in the shadows of every boardroom. Victor Crane was not just a business rival. He was a man with vendettas that ran deeper than anyone knew. He'd orchestrated betrayals that tore families apart, including Damian's. Emily listened, heart pounding, as the layers of deception peeled away. Meanwhile, Victor Crane's plan accelerated. His agents moved through the city's underworld, infiltrating banks, sabotaging deals, and spreading rumours that threatened to ruin Damian's reputation. A carefully planted scandal exploded overnight, a false accusation that sent shockwaves through the media. Damian's world tilted. In the face of the chaos, Emily stood resolute. "I won't let him win," she said fiercely. Damian looked at her with a mixture of awe and tenderness. "You're stronger than I ever imagined." Together, they prepared to fight, not just for their families, but for the fragile hope growing between them. But as the battle loomed, Damian received a chilling message. "You have 48 hours. Back off, or lose everything." The countdown had begun. Countdown to ruin. The clock on the marble mantelpiece ticked louder than usual, each second pounding like a warning in the silence of the penthouse. Damian stared at the message on his phone, the words etched in cold certainty. "You have 48 hours. Back off or lose everything." His jaw tightened, the weight of the threat sinking into his bones. Emily watched him from across the room, her hands clenched into fists. "We can't run," she said, voice steady despite the storm inside. "No," Damian agreed. "We fight." Together, they devised a plan to expose Victor Crane's schemes, a dangerous game of chess with corporate power, media manipulation, and hidden allies. Late into the night, they worked side by side, sharing stolen glances and whispered strategies. Amid the tension, something fragile blossomed, a connection deeper than the contract that bound them. But Victor was ruthless. He struck first. An anonymous tip to the police led to a surprise raid on Blackwood International's headquarters. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashing like lightning. Damian faced the crowd, calm but resolute. Emily stood beside him, her heart pounding with fear and fierce determination. Inside the chaos, a whispered phone call shattered their moment. "Emily, get out of there," Damian hissed urgently. She hesitated, then nodded, slipping away through a back exit into the rainy night. Outside, drenched and trembling, Emily made a decision. She wouldn't be a pawn any longer. She would become the queen. The battle for their future had only just begun. The Queen's Gambit. The rain soaked through Emily's coat as she slipped into the shadowed streets, heart hammering like a war drum. She wasn't just running from danger, she was running toward a choice. Fight or surrender. She chose to fight. Back at Blackwood International, Damian faced the storm alone. The police raid was a calculated move by Victor Crane, designed to humiliate and dismantle everything Damian had rebuilt. Yet Damian's gaze was unyielding. He addressed the waiting cameras and journalists with the poise of a man who refused to be broken. "This is a smear campaign, a desperate attempt to cover up the crimes of one man." His words carried the weight of truth, but the battle was far from over. Meanwhile, Emily reached out to an old ally, a journalist known for exposing corporate corruption. Her message was simple but urgent. "Help me bring Victor Crane down." Days passed with tense meetings and secret plans. Emily and Damian's paths crossed only in hurried phone calls and encrypted messages, their connections stretched thin but unbroken. One evening, as the city buzzed with rumours and speculation, Damian received a call. Emily's voice was steady but strained. "I found something. Evidence that could destroy Crane's empire." He didn't hesitate. "Where?" "In the old warehouse district. Meet me." Under the veil of night, they reunited in a deserted parking garage. The air was thick with tension and unspoken fears. Together, they sifted through crates of files and hard drives, proof of illegal deals, bribery, and sabotage. Their hands brushed as they worked, sending a jolt neither expected. But the moment shattered when footsteps echoed. Victor's men appeared, guns drawn, blocking their escape. Damian stepped forward, protective and fierce. Emily's breath caught. The game had turned deadly. A deadly gambit. The cold concrete beneath their feet echoed every hurried heartbeat. Emily and Damian stood back to back, surrounded by Victor's men, faces obscured by shadows, guns gleaming under the harsh overhead lights. The leader stepped forward, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "You shouldn't have come here, Blackwood. Or you, Miss Carter. This is the end of your little rebellion." Damian's eyes narrowed, calculating every move. "Put the weapons down," he commanded, voice steady but lethal. One of the men laughed, stepping closer. Emily's fingers tightened around the USB drive, their last hope. Suddenly, sirens blared in the distance. The sound was a lifeline, slicing through the tension. Victor's men cursed and hesitated. Damian seized the moment. "Run!" he shouted. They dashed through the dimly lit garage, adrenaline fueling every step. Outside, rain poured like a curtain. Emily's breath was ragged, heart pounding as she followed Damian through winding alleys. They didn't stop until they reached a safe house, a hidden refuge stocked with supplies and security. Inside, Damian locked the door behind them, leaning against it, exhausted but alive. Emily collapsed onto a worn sofa, still trembling. "We made it," she whispered. Damian sat beside her, his hand finding hers. No turning back now. Their eyes met, a mix of fear, relief, and something tender beneath the chaos. The files they recovered held explosive secrets, enough to bring Victor Crane down. But to use them, they needed proof beyond doubt. And enemies watching their every move. The war for truth, love, and survival had only just begun. Lines between love and war. The safe house was quiet, but Emily's mind was anything but. She replayed every moment of the escape, the danger, the fear, the rush of adrenaline. Damian sat nearby, focused on the files they'd retrieved, scanning for the irrefutable proof they needed. Hours passed. Emily finally broke the silence. "Damian, what happens if Victor finds us here?" He looked up, eyes dark and serious. "He will, so we have to be ready." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She found herself staring at Damian across the room. The man she hated, the man she was beginning to trust, maybe even love. His guard was down, his eyes softer in the dim light. Without thinking, she crossed the room and sat beside him. They didn't speak. But when their fingers brushed, the electricity was undeniable. The next day, they reached out to the journalist Emily had contacted, a fearless woman named Rachel. Rachel agreed to help, but warned, "This isn't just a story. It's a war zone. You're playing with fire." Together, they planned a sting operation to expose Victor's illegal dealings, but it meant putting themselves directly in the line of fire. As the day of the operation neared, tension mounted. Emily and Damian trained for what might come, sharing quiet moments of vulnerability and strength. One evening, Damian pulled Emily close. "Whatever happens," he whispered, "we face it together." She looked up, heart pounding. Together. But outside, in the darkness, Victor's eyes watched, waiting to strike. The edge of the game. The city slept, but Emily and Damian barely found rest. Every shadow seemed a threat, every sound a warning. The sting operation was set for dawn. They pored over plans, memorizing every detail. Emily's phone buzzed, a cryptic text. "You're running out of time. Stop, or suffer the consequences." Her heart raced, but she showed Damian only determination. "We can't back down now." The next morning, under the pale light of dawn, they moved with precision. Rachel and her camera crew waited in the shadows. Emily and Damian infiltrated Crane's private estate, seeking proof of illegal transactions. The tension was electric. Inside, they uncovered damning evidence, financial records, hidden accounts, secret meetings. But just as they were about to leave, alarms blared. Victor's security had been tipped off. They barely escaped, adrenaline sharp and unforgiving. Back at the safe house, Damian looked at Emily with fierce pride. "We did it," he said, "but this war is far from over." Emily nodded, fingers entwined with his. "Then we fight, together." The breaking point. The tension in the penthouse was suffocating. Emily paced the length of the living room, her mind racing faster than her feet. Damian stood by the window, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the city skyline. But his thoughts were elsewhere. Dark, stormy, tangled in fears he refused to admit aloud. The sting operation had been a success. They had the evidence they needed to expose Victor Crane, but the cost had been high. Every step forward felt like walking on a tightrope over a pit of fire. Their enemies were ruthless, and now they knew exactly how far Victor was willing to go. Emily stopped pacing, her voice breaking the silence. "We can't keep running forever." Damian turned, gaze sharp and exhausted. "We don't have a choice. Not yet." Her hands clenched. "There has to be another way. A way to end this without losing ourselves." He shook his head, stepping closer. "This isn't just about business anymore, Emily. It's personal. You, me, our families. Victor's aim is to destroy everything we hold dear." She swallowed hard, their eyes locked. The unspoken weight of everything between them pulsed like electricity. "Then we fight, no matter the cost." Damian reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "I've been waiting to hear those words." The night deepened. They sat together, planning the final moves. Every detail, every risk weighed and measured. But beneath the strategy, a fragile hope blossomed. For the first time, Emily believed they could survive this, together, crossing the line. The days blurred into nights as the final confrontation loomed. Emily and Damian grew closer, their fragile alliance turning into something neither dared to name. They shared quiet moments, a touch, a look, a smile, fleeting but charged with meaning. But the world outside was merciless. Victor Crane was escalating his attacks, hitting harder, striking faster. Their every move was shadowed. One evening, Damian found Emily alone on the balcony, staring out at the city lights. "Emily," he said softly, stepping beside her. She didn't turn. "Are you afraid?" She exhaled slowly. "I'm terrified." He reached for her hand. "We cross the line together, or we fall apart." She looked at him, tears shining. "Then we cross it." Later that night, after a tense board meeting, Damian kissed Emily with a desperate hunger. It was a release of months of tension, the pain, the fear, the longing. Their lips met in a fierce, desperate embrace. For a moment, nothing else existed. But the next morning brought cold reality. Victor Crane wasn't done. Beneath the surface, the fragile peace shattered as Victor launched a public smear campaign. Rumours spread like wildfire, accusations of corruption, betrayal and scandal. Damian's reputation was on the line. Emily stood by him, fighting back with truth and resilience. But the attack left wounds beneath the surface. One night, Damian confessed his fears. "What if this destroys us? What if we lose everything?" Emily took his hands, steady and sure. "We're stronger than that. We fight not just for us, but for everyone who believes in us." Their bond deepened, forged in fire. Meanwhile, Victor plotted in the shadows. He wasn't just attacking a business, he was waging a personal war. And Emily was his newest target. The price of trust was a fragile gift between Emily and Damian. Every secret, every lie chipped away at the fragile foundation they'd built. One night, Emily uncovered a hidden truth. A secret Damian had kept to protect her. Her heart broke. The confrontation was painful. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, voice trembling. "I wanted to shield you," he replied, eyes full of regret. "But we're supposed to be partners." They stood at a crossroads, trust broken, but love still there. They chose to rebuild, piece by piece. Outside, Victor's grip tightened. The price of trust was higher than they imagined. The final move. The climax was near. Emily and Damian prepared their final move against Victor Crane. The evidence was solid. The plan was risky. Failure wasn't an option. They met in the war room, a quiet, tense space filled with blueprints, files, and determination. Every detail was scrutinized, every risk weighed. Emily looked at Damian. "Ready?" He nodded, taking her hand. Always. The battle for their future was about to begin. The final move, redemption and freedom. The city held its breath. After months of scheming, lies, and relentless battles, the final moment had arrived. Emily and Damian stood side by side in the sleek, glass-walled war room, high above the city streets, the pulse of the urban jungle a distant hum beneath their feet. Before them lay every piece of evidence they had painstakingly gathered. Documents exposing Victor Crane's illegal dealings, recordings of whispered betrayals, financial transactions that painted a clear picture of greed and destruction. But it wasn't just the proof that weighed heavy in the room. It was the price they had paid, the scars etched on their hearts, the fragile trust they'd rebuilt, and the love that had grown stronger through fire. Damian turned to Emily, his eyes reflecting both exhaustion and fierce determination. "This is it," he said quietly. "The moment we take everything back." She nodded, her own resolve shining through her tired gaze. "We end this. For us. For everyone Victor has hurt." Their fingers found each other's, a silent vow made stronger by the storm they had weathered. The plan was simple but dangerous. They would release the evidence publicly, exposing Victor's empire in a media blitz orchestrated with Rachel's fearless team. But Victor was powerful and desperate. They knew he would fight back with everything he had. The next hours passed like a whirlwind. Cameras flashed as Damian held a press conference, laying bare Victor's crimes with undeniable clarity. Emily watched from behind the scenes, heart pounding as the world finally learned the truth. Meanwhile, Victor's reaction was immediate and furious. He unleashed a brutal legal attack, lawsuits, injunctions, and threats designed to crush Blackwood International. But Damian and Emily were prepared. Their allies rallied, their strategy flawless. The public, hungry for justice, stood with them. Late into the night, Emily and Damian sat in the quiet aftermath. The city lights twinkled below like distant stars, a symbol of hope after darkness. Damian reached for Emily's hand. "We did it," he whispered, "but more than that, we found each other." Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she smiled. "This contract," she said softly, "was supposed to bind us in obligation. Instead, it forged something real." They leaned into each other, the walls they'd built finally crumbling. The past no longer held power over them. The future stretched wide, uncertain, but theirs. Weeks later, the final legal battles ended. Victor Crane was defeated, exposed, and disgraced. Blackwood International stood stronger than ever, and Emily and Damian stood united. Their wedding was simple, no contracts, no deals, just two souls choosing each other freely, unbound by any terms but love. As they exchanged vows, Emily felt a peace she had never known. Damian's voice was steady, full of promise. "With you, I am home." The bride contract was over, but their story, their loved, was just beginning. The end,